YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Carson Wentz traded from the Colts to the Commanders. Wild offseason already. As soon as Rodgers decided, we had the Russell Wilson trade. We graded that. Now we got this trade. A lot more going to happen. Then we got the free agency frenzy next week. I can't wait. So I'm here to grade this trade, of course, give you my thoughts. A little bit of a surprising one. We were talking a lot about this on Twitter. Breaking news on there, rumors, predictions, thoughts, more interacting with you guys, answering questions. So follow that Twitter. Absolute must follow. Link down below. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Full off-season coverage. Still want to keep saying it. Still want to update a mock draft, but everything keeps changing. Here with picks, involving picks. So, but I can't wait to do that. We'll grade every single free agency signing once it all officially kicks off next week. We'll have multiple videos for that. I'm just really excited. Hopefully you guys are as well, and hopefully you can join us. Here's our Twitter, just constant updates, news, crunching numbers. People get kind of confused with that, so we clarify everything here. So join us on Twitter. Much appreciated. So here's the deal. The Commanders get their quarterback. They wanted Russell Wilson. They called around. Derek Carr they called for. Didn't want to wait around for Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm sure they called for more. But they get Carson Wentz. And they get a 2022 second-round pick that's 47th overall, but it's a swap. So first glance, it looks like, they got a second-round pick. Now they actually swapped the 2022 seconds and moved back a little bit. Not much. I'm surprised that ended up in there because it's really – at first glance, I guess it's small, but it's pretty – second round's very valuable. So the Colts move up actually with that. And the Colts, on top of moving up a few picks in the second round, they get – the Washington Commanders' third-round pick, which is actually early. Washington has fairly solid picks in each round, but it's more towards the top compared to the other rounds there in the third round, which is 73rd overall. So it's a pretty good third-round pick right there. And then a 2023 third-round pick that can become a second. 70% snaps Carson Wentz has to play. If he plays 70% of his snaps, then the Colts get a second-round pick in 2023 instead of a third. So this is a bit surprising. Not really Carson Wentz going to Washington, honestly, but what was involved with this trade. You can look at both teams. Let's say if we would have talked about this happening with this exact compensation before today, a week ago, whenever, I think everyone would like, no, there's no way that's happening. Yeah, that I could see Wentz on the Commanders, but there's no way that's the details of the trade. Washington fans probably would have been like, no, you're crazy. We don't want that. And they don't look too happy about this right now either. And the same way with the Colts fans, if we go before the Jacksonville loss and he said this was going to happen, they'd be like, no, why would we do that? So it's pretty crazy that this all came to be here. And what was actually involved, and financially is a little surprising as well because Washington will take on his full $28.294 cap hit. I thought there was a shot if the Colts were to get something decent in return, which they did. I thought there was a good shot that they would have to pay a portion of a salary because the Colts have a good amount of cap there. So that would have made sense. That wasn't the case either. So it's pretty damn wild. But let's just start with the Colts. I think it's an A+. Let's make this clear. The original Wentz trade, the Colt last year, where the Colts traded for Wentz, I gave that in the C range at the time. I didn't like it. So what? Now that it's done, what is it now? It's an F. It's definitely an F. But some people, sometimes when I do these trade grades, and there's a linked trade like that, they think I should have that factor in. They're separate deals. We're living in the now. What's going in now. So they get an F for that past deal. They're getting an A+ for this one because I don't know what the best part is. They got more value than expected. I thought a third-round pick was very possible, but I thought they would have to pay a portion of the salary, which wouldn't have been at the end of the world because you get a third-round pick and you have a lot of cap space to pay a portion of the salary. But they get more than a third-round pick and don't have to pay any of the salary here. There's a decent shot that third-round pick next year turns into a second. You move up in a second, you get a third, and worst case, you get a third next year. This is pretty good. I guess there is a negative here. It has nothing to really do with the trade, though, the trade details, compensation. It's Do they have a replacement lined up? I'm sure they have a plan. They're already being linked to Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a little tricky, though, because he's hurt. Do you trade for a guy that's hurt, 25.55 cap hit going from Wentz to that? Does it make a whole lot of sense? Do they deal for someone else? Do they kind of get just a one-year guy for now? Do they try to trade up and draft a guy? We'll see what they do, but it's a little bit of a mystery. So, that's the downside, but it's not really the worst thing. They just kind of made it clear they didn't really want to roll Wentz, and it would have been kind of odd if they kind of kept him in there, in that room with them, in that locker room, with that atmosphere, which I think the players get along, obviously. But so just, again, what they got in return was a little surprising, especially considering, people are talking about the financials here. They didn't have to pay any of the salary, which that's the surprising part to me. And they had plenty of cap space, so it's not like, wow, they now they have cap space. No, they had plenty of cap space, but now they have around $70 million in cap space, which is pretty ridiculous. So they can make a ton of moves, try to build this roster up a little better here. So they're a better team this year, regardless of the quarterback. Honestly, you can get somebody that's a little more of a game manager type. Maybe they don't have that big play ability as Wentz. Maybe most people don't. Just a scenario. Maybe most people don't consider this new person they get in the scenario as better than Wentz, but he's going to take care of the ball better than Wentz. But then you build the roster around him. You get better receivers. You find a left tackle. You get a proven pass rusher. A better corner. Maybe you can do all that because the defense, I think, may take a hit going from Eberflus scheme to, I think it definitely will, from Eberflus scheme to Bradley scheme. You got to want to find guys that kind of fit that as well. So you can use that cap space to build this roster, make it a little, and it's already pretty solid, but make it a little bit better here. Will they spend the space though? Because I feel like every year they have this amount of cap space, and they're a little, they're relying on development a little too much. And we keep talking about it. The way Irsay's talking, it sounds like they're going to go out there and do some damage here. We'll see if that's the case. So curious. I'm very curious. Now into Washington. Don't love this for Washington. I'm covering the B. I gave up the D plus. There's a plus behind me, so at least I tacked that on. And more news coming in. Jordan Hicks released by the Cardinals. Let me pause the video and tweet that real quick. Tweet sent. All right. So the Commanders give them a D plus. I don't love this for them. I don't love it. I mean, here's the positive. At the end of the day, they got better at quarterback. Carson Wentz is kind of similar to Heineke, but he's a little bit better. If you look at last year, if they had that, they probably make the playoffs. What kind of damage they actually do, though, other positive is, it's kind of expected, though. They still could help build the team with the first and second round pick this year. They still have those, obviously, which kind of should be the case. Yeah, it's a good roster. They didn't have a whole lot of needs. Maybe they didn't want to deal with the rookie. So I guess there are some positives, but I mainly just grade off value. I don't love the value for them. I think they overpaid without the Colts paying that's a big part. The Colts didn't pay any portion of this salary, and Washington had a good amount of cap space at $33 million. After this, they have around $5 million. So not much they can do there. Maybe release some players, move on from Landon Collins, but not much they can do now. And again, they don't have a whole lot of needs, but you still want to get another receiver out there because Curtis Samuel's kind of your hybrid type player. McLaurin's a legit wide receiver. And they got some other under the radar guys, but they're gonna need somebody else in there as a starter. I want to make sure this offensive line's kind of complete. It played very well last year, but sure, for free agent, what are they going to do with him? Probably gone. Could use another corner, could use a linebacker. Little limited in the cap space. That's a big one because now your offseason, besides the draft, it's not over, but probably not too far off there unless they do something else crazy to clear space or something. So that's a tough part for me. But yeah, giving up, the swap of the second round picks is a very small part of this. I just don't get why that was necessary. Wasn't it? It just looks like I think the Colts are a little more powerful at the front office than the Commanders. That's what it looks like here because remember the Colts were the desperate ones. Remember about a month ago reported Wentz is either cut or traded. Colts are done with them. They want to move on. Everyone's saying that's legit. That's fact. They want to move on. The Colts should lose leverage at that point. They should lose leverage because they want to move on from. They want to clear that space. They want somebody else. The damage is done there, and then all of a sudden, Washington allowed the Colts to gain, not gain leverage, but control the leverage. And I think maybe Washington, it being well known that they were in on guys like Russell Wilson and missed out on that. They became desperate. They lost the leverage. They just couldn't control the situation, is what it looks like. So the third round pick is good this year too. It's an early third round pick, and I talked about this on Twitter. I talked about this last year. People argued with me about this. I talked about it last year for the Colts when they traded for Wentz because they had the same situation with that incentive trade, like that second rounder that could become a first round pick. It's the same thing here in this one, but it's a third rounder that's going to become a second rounder if Wentz plays 70% of the snaps. I hate that. I hate that trade so much. I hate it because it's just a lose-lose situation, and you're putting bad thoughts like in your mind when trading for a guy. You're valuing a guy like Carson Wentz so much because you're basically, if you're Washington, if you're the front office, you're Ron Rivera, you're making this deal, you're getting this quarterback, and then you got to put this 70%. You got to play 70% of snaps. So right then and there, done. You're thinking, yeah, he might not play 70% snaps, whether he's injured or maybe a Heineke. They'd rather just go with Heineke. So that's not good. It's not a good thought. It's not good in general. But a big part of it is they're rooting to give up a second round pick next year. Hey, we want to give up a valuable pick. We really want to give up a valuable pick because if we're giving up that third instead, that means Wentz didn't work out, and then we just traded in even a third's value. We just traded a third and other picks worth value for a guy that didn't work out. So that's just a lose. I hate that. I hate those trades. You rarely see them in the NFL. We saw the Colts do it last year, and the Colts got the Commanders to do one this year. It's almost contradicting. It's almost contradicting your opinion when you do that. It's like you think highly of this guy, obviously Carson Wentz, because you're trading good value for him and you're paying his full salary this year, and you just made sure you went and got him. But then you're kind of, with that incentive base and the 70% snaps got to play, it's just a bad look. It's like, maybe we don't think. I don't know. I said the same thing last year. People were trying to say, well, if he doesn't work out, we only give up this pick, but you're still giving up picks, and he didn't work out. So the trade was just a big fail in general. If Wentz works out, yeah, that's good. He worked out. But you're giving up more than, the second round pick by itself is too much value for Carson Wentz. I threw out the idea of a third round while the Colts pay the salary, and people thought that was too much. So the more I'm talking about, the more I gave it a D already. D+. I tacked on that plus right before recording this because it's a pretty good roster. They can still make it better with the first round pick this year, which is pretty early, in their second round pick, which was just a swap with the Colts. They can still make it better there. But at the end of the day, when trading for guys like this, it's almost like you're spending so much in terms of actual money and value that you traded away that it better not pay off, just pay off. It better pay off big, but could it really? And he could be better than expected for sure. He had good moments last year. He could be better expected. It's a good roster, but how big is it really going to pay off? What's the sky here? Well, where could they go? What could they possibly do? So that's a tough one, a surprising one. I know on Twitter it already feels like Washington fans aren't too thrilled about it. I respect that because there's a lot of I've been covering football for a while and gathering people's thoughts and comments. There's a ton of people, a ton of fans that think something's bad when their team does it. It's the greatest thing in the world, and it's just a bad look for NFL fans in general. Washington, based on what I gather, which isn't a huge percentage, but they're just being honest. So I could respect that at least. We'll see what happens from this, though. Curious to see how Wentz plays with Washington. Can they control him a little bit? They got talent over there. Very curious to see what the Colts do with all that cap space and who they go for at quarterback. I talked about could they go for a guy like Kirk Cousins. I wouldn't mind that for him, but pretty pricey. We talked about that on Twitter. Madness this time of year. My phone's going off like crazy. What's happening? We got you covered for all of it. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'm really excited. It's just beginning here. Follow us on Twitter. It's an absolute must-follow. Link down below. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.